The 2018 NFL Combine rolls on today with Day 4. On the field, we'll see the highly anticipated quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends work out. And coming up, we'll take a look at the offensive linemen of this year's draft and hear from one ESPN analyst on who he thinks the Lions should target in round 1 on road to the draft. Hello and welcome to Road to the Draft live from the Combine presented by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers. I'm Tori Petry here at the Indiana Convention Center where all of the media and fan action is happening this week. Yesterday we gave you a look at the running backs who could help improve the Lions' run game, and today we are taking it up front to the offensive line. The offensive linemen worked out yesterday on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium in front of scouts. They've been creating quite the buzz, both positive and negative. One of the biggest stories from this combine is that interior offensive lineman Billy Price tore his pec partially during the bench press drill. Physically, guard Will Hernandez has impressed, but tackle Orlando Brown has been underwhelming. Now, the Lions are probably set at tackle with Rick Wagner and Taylor Decker, but they could be looking at the interior lineman as center Travis Swanson is set to hit free agency. Here's what some of the top offensive linemen had to say about their week in Indy.
Just through practice, I mean, being at the University of Georgia, and especially in the SEC, you know, I face the quickest guys at practice. So, you know, just having that time from spring up until season, fall camp, you know, I was going against the best of the best pass rushers.
And what are Sony and Chubb like as teammates?
They're great. They're two great running backs. They feed off each other, they play off each other, so they're just a dynamic duo. I take a lot of pride. I mean, it's just a good feeling just knowing that they're hitting what their goals may be as far as rushing yards, and they're getting national publicity for that. You know, I take a lot of pride in that. I mean, it's great being a part of that because I know without me or the rest of the offensive line, they wouldn't have got there, so it's good.
I definitely think they're starting to value guards and interior linemen more, guards and centers for sure. I've heard it from teams themselves. You know, I think it's starting to even out a little bit between tackle and guard, and I'm glad it's going on because I mean, quarterback can not have pressure, but if he doesn't have nothing to step into, you know, what's the point? But I'm glad they're starting to value centers and guards a lot more.
The bench press side, like your number was a little bit on the low side. Did you have any deducted, or what was going on?
Yeah, you know, personally, I didn't stick to my routine, my breathing routine, and you know, that's the lowest number that I've done. You know, I'll redo it at my pro day.
Is that the kind of thing you worry may be held against you in some way, or do you think you can make up for it?
Keeping it real, you know, it's going to be held against me. You know, all my numbers will be held against me. If, you know, if I'm an offensive tackle, my numbers are going to be compared to other offensive tackles. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, so getting ready for the bench press, got into my warm-up set, had no problem, no issues. Got the first rep off, got to the third, bar was still doing well, felt a pop, immediately racked it. Something that didn't feel right. I've been lifting since I was in 5th grade, something that I'm very familiar with my body, and I try to be very aware of what's going on. And didn't feel something right, grabbed it, make sure, just again, you feel a little bit of swelling, you feel a little bit of a pop, a tingle. Went into, got the medical doctors here, Brian McGuire, got me set up with the doctors, got it checked out by the Indianapolis Colts doctors and trainers, and got the MRI results this morning. It was officially an incomplete pec tear. With no grade, no issues like that. Something very minor. Looking at the MRI results, we were able to see a little bit of an issue. Nothing that's going to force me to miss time at all. Something that I'm looking forward to. I'll be back. I'll be fine for the season going forward, and I should be fine going into training camp.
Joining me now to break down the offensive linemen of this year's Combine is DetroitLions.com's Tim Twentyman. Tim, obviously a disappointing week for Billy Price, partially tearing that pick during the bench press.
Yeah, he only got to rep 3, and he said he felt something, but good news for him, and he's considered, you know, probably one of the best centers in this draft, you know, a day 1, day 2 kind of guy.
Yeah.
It's a partial tear. It wasn't a complete tear, so that's good for him. He's getting a second opinion, but it's certainly going to shut him down for a couple months. He's probably going to, you know, miss the spring, but he said he won't miss any time in the fall, so that's obviously good for him and good for any team that wants to draft him.
Certainly. Now, looking at the guys that were able to work out, I was personally really impressed with guard Will Hernandez in that 5'14", 40-yard dash, and he is a big dude.
327 pounds big. And look, he was a guy who was among my, top 10 guys who impressed at the Senior Bowl as well. I thought he was really, really good there. I think he got beat in one rep I saw all week long, and I think he's kind of continued that right into this combine. Those are impressive numbers. I thought the drill work was good for him too, not just the 40 times and stuff like that, but he was smooth. He moves well for a big man.
He doesn't move like a big man.
No, but he's a mauler, and that's what he is. He's going to instantly step in. He's a plug-and-play guard, and he's going to help your run game immediately, and he's shown that the pass rushing or the pass blocking prowess as well. And so, I think he's really helped himself over the last month, a guy that's probably ran the fringe of the first round, certainly a second-round pick.
And then on the other side of that, there is Orlando Brown, who many had high expectations for him, and physically in his drills, he just really has not performed to standard.
Well, this is why, NFL people will tell you that the tape is more important than the drills. People knew coming in that he wasn't a great athlete and that he was probably going to struggle in some of these drills.
Sure.
But if you flip on the tape of him, he's one of the best tackles that you watch tape on. And he's considered, probably the second or third best tackle here, even though he had 14 reps and he ran a 5.8, 5.40, and I think he had a 19.5-inch vertical, which I think my 10-year-old son can have, But, it's just some guys test well and some guys play well. Obviously, NFL people want the guys who play well versus the guys who test well. Ideally, you'd like both. But I think now what you have to do if you're a scout or if you're someone evaluating Orlando Brown is now you go back to the tape. And you have to do some extra work on him because the combine numbers were so bad that you have to feel really good about the tape if you're going to take him in the first round, which a lot of people thought he'd be a first-round pick coming into this week.
Yeah, and if you watched our interview with Lions VP of Player Personnel, Kyle O'Brien, earlier this week, he talked about how, you don't necessarily really have guys shooting up or dropping down draft boards dramatically here at the combine. It's really just a little bit smaller moves because these guys know what they're looking at. They've been following these guys for years now. It's not just the first time they're seeing them here at the Combine.
Yeah, what you want here is the numbers to confirm what you see on tape. And when they don't, that's when guys have to go back and watch more tape and revisit some things, especially when, a wide receiver that you see make a ton of plays down the field or separate, off his breaks, and then he comes here, runs a 4.6, you got to go back to the tape and see what's the difference there. It was kind of a similar thing we saw with Tease Tabor last year with the Lions. You saw the tape and he was considered one of the best guys, and he came here and he ran really, really slow. So then Bob Quinn and company went back to the tape, and obviously what they saw there reaffirmed that he was a terrific pick. So you got to be careful with numbers sometimes. It's still always the tape, but certainly things can concern you here, and Orlando Brown was one of those guys.
A 5.86 40-yard dash, I got to say.
What did you run last year?
It was a 5.98, and these shoes right here, 5.98, and not a very good look in terms of the 40-yard dash.
No, it wasn't. But one other point to the interior offensive lineman is Quentin Nelson, who's considered one of the best linemen here from Notre Dame. I thought he made a terrific point yesterday in speaking with the media. First, there's only been 3 guards chosen in the top 10 since 2000. I think he's going to be another one. But he said, look, with guys like Aaron Donald and Fletcher Cox and Geno Atkins are destroying this league right now, and they're doing it from the interior. And he said, look, the times when guards and centers aren't valued in the draft, that time is over because Donald Atkins. And he said, look, obviously the Lions could have a need there depending on what happens, with Graham Glasgow and Travis Swanson, some of these guys, and that could be the final piece. But it's a very, very important piece, and this is a very deep interior offensive line. Certainly good news for Lions.
All right, well, a lot of people have the Lions taking a defensive lineman or a running back in that first round of the draft with the 20th pick, but ESPN's Todd McShea has a different idea, which happens to go right along with what we're talking about today. We talked to him about that as well as the defensive linemen and running backs, and here's what he had to say.
There's a big drop-off after Bradley Chubb from NC State. So the next best player is a player in Marcus Davenport from Texas San Antonio that reminds me a lot of Ansah. Raw, long, powerful. Listen, he would be a good pick if he's there. I don't know that he will be, but I don't know that that's the fit. I think maybe more of a versatile linebacker and maybe someone who's got more speed to complement on the opposite side. So if that's the case, this year's class, there's just not a lot of depth there. But I think in the second, third round, like an Arden Key if he falls because of some off-the-field concerns. Harold Landry from Boston College. struggled this year, but 2 years ago, I think he led the nation in sacks. So there are some guys in that second, third round range that you can bring in and then still have that first round pick to address a different need.
And it's no secret that the Lions need to improve their run game. Even Bob Quinn said he'd probably add a running back to the room this offseason. Do you see them addressing that in the first round of the draft, or is it smarter to wait on that spot?
I would wait, but it depends on who's available. Saquon Barkley's not going to be. So after that, you get Ronald Jones from USC, who had a little bit of an injury here this week. He did a good vertical, and didn't really do anything else. But, I mean, the depth is so good. That's why I would wait. So you've got Nick Chubb and Sony Michel from Georgia. You've got Kalen Ballage from Arizona State, who could be a third-round pick where you could get a really good value and use him as a receiver, running back, hybrid-type player. I mean, the list goes on and on of these running backs, but I think, to me, second day is kind of where the sweet spot would be to try to get a running back that you think can be at least a rotational starter early on and then develop maybe into the guy later, but there's definitely some talent.
Do you think there are any three-down feature backs in those second and third days?
It kind of depends on who falls. I mean, Darius Geis is probably going to go in the first round. Jones could fall a little bit, and then I think he potentially could be, although he's going to have to be in a rotation. I think Ballage has the size, but he's never been the featured back. He always split carries at Arizona State, so why would you think that would be different in the NFL? You're not counting on it, but look at the impact that Alvin Kamara made for New Orleans. If you have another guy and rotate, and Kareem Hunt, he comes in, and we all thought he was going to be a really good backup who could be in a complementary role and then maybe develop down the road and bang like that. So there's enough talent here that there will certainly be 2 or 3 guys that come in and say, wow, he's going to wind up taking on a lot bigger load and being more explosive in the league than we anticipated coming out.
In your mock draft, you have the Lions addressing the interior of their offensive line with Isaiah Wynn. Why was that the pick you went with?
Because there wasn't a defensive end there, and there wasn't a couple other positions there that I was looking at. So I wound up going with that spot. It's a deep group at guard. It's a good group at guard. There's not a lot of offensive tackles, but there's Isaiah Wynn to me. You got Will Hernandez from UTEP, who's going to probably be in the first round. It's my guess. Maybe because it's a guard, he slips into the early second round range. But this group is deep. I mean, Billy Price can play guard or center. There's a lot of interior prospects, and even some guys like the Nevada kid, Corbett, who moved into left tackle when Bitonio was a second round pick and has been a starter there since, but really fits because of his arm length and different reasons as a guard. So I think there's going to be some talent. If it's not in the first, and I'm sure Lions fans would rather it not be in the first, then it'll be in the second or third round where you have an opportunity when you come up, look at the board and say, wow, this player's worth it.
So McShay sees the drop off at defensive end along with the value in the later rounds at running back as the reason why he would go with a guard. Would that surprise you if that's what the Lions did?
No. What I said off the last segment, the value of those guys and how you have to, be good against those interior defenders. It's an important position, and it's an area of need for Lions, And Matt Patricia said on Wednesday that he wants to build from the ball out. Well, that doesn't just mean the defensive side of the ball either. I think that's offensively too. And look, you've got Taylor Decker, you've got TJ Lang, you've got Rig Wagner, and you've got Graham Glasgow. You don't know where Graham's at quite yet. They're going to figure that in April, but I think it's dependent upon maybe somebody they see here, and what they see as a value. And so certainly I could see them taking a guy like, Isaiah Wynn out of Georgia, a former SEC tackle who's, because of his height and arms, has moved to guard. Well, that's a super athletic guard who could play tackle and hold his own, in the SEC, switching over to guard. We talked about Will Hernandez. I think there's a need there in the first couple days for the Lions, so I don't think it's a big reach at all if you're at number 20.
And as a quick preview for tomorrow, where we'll be talking about the defensive line, Todd talked about that a little bit and the drop-off that he sees after Chubb there. Who could stick out on day 2, you think, on the defensive line?
Yeah, I agree with Todd, in terms of Marcus Davenport's probably the next guy. And I agree, and I wrote this at the Senior Bowl, too. He reminds me a lot of Ziggy Ansah.
There's a lot of Ziggy comparisons there.
Raw, small school guy. Now, Ziggy didn't go to a small school, but he joined football late, and he didn't have a lot of experience. And so the similar kind of guys, long, lengthy, athletic, have to prove something. And then there's another drop after that. And so, then you get into your Landrys, your Lewises, and some of those other guys from Ohio State. And it's going to be interesting how this goes because of the huge drop. If Davenport's not there at number 20, do you start looking guard? Does one of these running backs really,
maybe you're sold on Darius Geis, and he's still there.
But I think one position, too, that we can't forget about is we talk about the edge and running backs, but defensive tackle, too. They've got A'Shawn Robinson coming back, but Haloti Ngata is a free agent. You don't know what his situation is going to be. And behind that, you've got some kind of young and inexperienced guys at defensive tackle. So I could certainly see them using the 20 pick if a guy like Vita Vea is there, Maurice Hurst, and some of those interior defenders.
Sure.
I think that's a position at number 22 that they could certainly keep on.
Well, we'll save the rest of that discussion for tomorrow's defensive line episode. Thank you so much, Tim, for weighing in on the offense. Here. Make sure you guys watch the Combine here on NFL Network. It's on all the way through March 5th, including today. And stay tuned because we have just one more live show left for you guys from the Combine, and that'll be tomorrow around the 1 o'clock hour. We appreciate you tuning in to Road to the Draft live from the Combine, presented by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers. We'll see you tomorrow.